Good afternoon everybody, and thank you for being here and for being here today to celebrate the 10th European Day of the Righteous. 10 years ago, Brussels members of parliament instituted this important day to remember exemplary individuals, but also the highest value of European culture. And in a certain sense, we like to think that when it comes to the righteous, we talk about the moral elite of humanity, as Moshe Besky, the creator of the Vashem in Jerusalem, said. Today it's even more important, and we feel responsible when we speak about righteous and European values. We are proud for what surrounds us, and we are unfortunately once again facing with this and focusing this celebration, this conference, on the theme of no more genocides is even more important and relevant if we think about what is happening today in Ukraine and not only. 10 years ago, as I said, we started this pathway, this journey with Gariwo and with the European Parliament to remember these extraordinary individuals who did not choose to be indifferent. They chose to act and to react. And so today we would like to take a step forward. That is, we would like to reflect on the concept of the righteous linked to the prevention of genocide. Today's conference will involve many individuals who will deep dive into this concept, analyzing their nuances. And before giving the floor to this guest, I would like to give the floor to Elena Buscemi from the Municipality of Milan. Thank you very much. And first of all, good afternoon. Let me greet Senator Mrs. Segre, Mr. Boldrini, Mr. Nissim, and this is a pleasure for me to be part as a representative of the town of Milan in the ceremony of the righteous there, and I am feeling the same thing. And so 10 years have elapsed when the European Parliament welcomed the request of Gariwo to institute the Day of the Righteous on the 6th of March. These years, throughout the years, thanks to the work of many people, the gardens of the righteous were born that have rekindled the story of those who have, of course, done something for the others. Some hidden stories, and the world need them to try and get emancipated from the culture of hatred, intolerance, and violence. Today, more than ever, unfortunately, as we heard. Today's topic is genocide prevention and preventing mass atrocities. So the stories of the righteous against silence and indifference. This is absolutely relevant, unfortunately, for this day that also takes into consideration war of Russia against Ukraine. It proves the reputation of the powerful human beings all around the world, and it seems that history has not taught anything to those who impose on the others, to those who replace dialogue with violence. And in a moment like this one that we are experiencing now, that we need to be even more committed in the work of dissemination of remembrance and in working on the righteous. The fact that the world is falling into the same trap must not be led us to think that this work is easy, but there are decisions made by governance, and on the other side, the feelings of the people. So today, hundreds of thousands of people are demonstrating against war, and this is also through the example of the righteous men and women who have given and sometimes lost their life for peace and for good. They are not only symbols, they are lighthouses, they are sirens, they are lights indicating the way to be followed. And our commitment to have their story, to maintain is alive is very important, and Milan for remembrance has done a lot, and in this sense the commitment of this administration is really important, significant, and it will go on growing. It will continue growing. And before finishing, I would like to remember with a round of applause Davide Sassoli, who has done a lot for Italy and for this day and for the promotion of the value of responsibility, accountability, tolerance. And we would like to thank him once again and remember him. I'd like to thank President Buscemi, and to get to the core of these topics and of the theme that we're going to deal with. In January 2001, the president of Gariwo, Gabriele Nissim, had already made 3 proposals to the Foreign Affairs Commission. The report of violations all around the world of human rights, the creation of an independent commission looking for such violations of human rights and genocides underway, and also an Italian advisor for prevention of genocide based on the model of the UN. What actually follows this pathway, and not only, is the commitment of Mrs. Boldrini, who's a president of the Permanent Committee of the Chamber of Deputies on the human rights. And I would like to have her here to talk about prevention of genocide and the stories of the righteous. Here we are. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everybody. First of all, let me greet Gariwo's president, Gabriele Nissim, the president of the City Council of Milan, Elena Buscemi, and the speakers of this international conference. And let me also greet Liliana Segre. Thank you, Liliana, as always, for what you do against any form of discrimination. As we heard, this meeting takes place in the very worst moment. And we are experiencing some dramatic days, dramatic scenarios, because we see that in the heart of Europe, the war is back. The war is back in a country like Ukraine that had already experienced the horror of the Second World War and had already experienced the extermination of the Jews, the Russian dictatorship. So when weapons talk and when missiles fly and bombs fall and you can see rockets, well, in that case, for some, they may seem weak. And the words of peace seem to be weak, but they must be claimed with conviction, with persuasion in this very moment. So let me explain you something. Last Tuesday at the Chamber of Deputies, we voted a resolution to condemn this war triggered by Vladimir Putin, this absolutely unacceptable war. And I voted in favor of such resolution. But there are some who ask for separate votes, something that you can do, as Liliana knows well. And so, talking about the vote on the transfer of weapons, I found myself in a difficult position. I expressed my doubts and I did not vote in favor of this. Why? Because I am a supporter of Vladimir Putin? Absolutely not. Because I have always criticized and attacked his politics of repression of minorities and of all those showing dissent. His way also of thinking about freedom of press. And we have already seen how he conceives that, and we have seen what happens to political opponents. So this is not the reason why I did that. I simply do not believe that weapons are the solution to this crisis today. And we must also say something else. In Ukraine, we have an aggressor and something who's being aggressed, and somebody who's being aggressed. And on the side of this party that has been aggressed, we have the international community. At the UN, an unprecedented vote took place. 141 votes in favor of the resolution of condemnation of Putin. One country was decided to abstain from that, and 4 countries voted against this resolution. And what are these countries? Belarus, Northern Korea, Eritrea, and Syria. So these are Putin's friends. So I would really like to stress this point. Indeed, I talk about that with President Nissim because the link between democracy and the topics relevant to that and prevention of genocide. And this is what we do at the Chamber of, with the Committee on Human Rights. We try to prove that the only way to have the country in a safety condition is to ensure human rights all around the world, in every corner of the planet. Because when human rights are respected, we can all live in peace and safety and security. During the well-known hearing of the 27th of January of 2021, President Nissim was before the Foreign Affairs Commission and made some proposals. And these proposals led to general consensus of all political parties. And one of these proposals, as we have already heard, concerned a report to be issued to denounce, to report the danger of new genocides, and also to include all measures that are needed to prevent genocide. And I think that it will be up to us and up to the Commission on Human Rights when we issue the final report after our investigation that Mr. Nissim will be the context when we propose some critical issues and also some measures that can be applied in those contexts, in those scenarios. And I am here once again because I want to express how sorry I am, and I can also, I think I interpret Liliana Segre's feelings when I say that the proposal to establish an office, a bureau, an authority that is independent in Italy and takes care and deals with protection of human rights, unfortunately risks remaining being stuck once again. There are some proposals in this sense, but there are some political forces that are blocking it, and they block the institution of an authority monitoring respect of human rights in Italy. And it seems almost impossible, but this is what is happening. So we have some bills, but it would be good for you to also carry out some moral suasion vis-à-vis those political forces that oppose themselves to debating this. Mr. President, the 22nd and the 20th century has been contradictory because on the one hand, we have seen the century of technological progress, but also claims of workers' rights, feminism that led women to be respected as legal, political, economic subjects, same rights, same duties, and it was also the century when human rights were reaffirmed. the Constitution of 1948 and also constitutions of countries coming out of the Second World War. And all these rights are being put at test. But that century also included two world wars, the horror of the Holocaust, the Armenian genocide, the Rwandan genocide, ethnic cleansing in former Yugoslavia, the persecution of many minorities like Uyghurs and many others, of course, and dramatic consequences of this crisis, the war in former Yugoslavia and all that happened in Rwanda was very important because I witnessed that as I worked for the United Nations, and I was on a prolonged mission in those places. And I could also witness, based on the stories of the victims, what happened there. So we thought that all that was overcome. But today we can still hear about the hypothesis of the Third World War. And what can we think based on that? That peace is not forever. We have to focus on it. It's not once for always. Also in the democratic heart of Europe, the danger of new genocides, and this danger will never go away as long as the poison of hatred continues to be disseminated, but also extreme nationalisms that are fed by political forces that want to get electoral consensus. And we must say that there are clear responsibilities in that. And all this erodes civil cohabitation. It makes it impossible. And today, all this is amplified by social media, by the web. You can see that there are hundreds and hundreds of pages disseminating hatred and also fostering hatred and violence, and they are detrimental for youngsters, and many of them fall into the trap of believing in these ferocious ideologies. So we need to prevent. We say that often. We need to fight the issue and the hatred, and the issue of hatred at the roots, the issue of racism. And for that, we need to carry out some important cultural efforts that must convey a crucial principle into our youngsters' mind. So the destruction of any minority, the genocide of any social groups is not only a terrifying and hideous phenomenon, and also an irreparable damage for humankind, but also for themselves. As Raphael Lemkin said, it is a damage for each one of us. So destroying the others is not only unacceptable and terrible for the others, it is as terrible and as unacceptable for us. So, Mr. President, thank you for today's initiative. It is really important because we can continue reflecting upon that, and it gives us the energy to go on, and we must not be scared of intimidations that we receive on a daily basis, because those who work for human rights are always subject to violence, and this is the way we are following. So it's important to be present at the 10th anniversary of the Day of the Righteous. And here, in these premises, Mr. President, let me repeat my willingness to join forces so that we can win. Win with what? With the feelings and of solidarity, of dialogue, of civil cohabitation. All this are some conditions that we really need today. So thank you very much, and have this beautiful conference. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mrs. President. And all these words also push us to go on working and continue in our effort. We have already heard some of the words: hatred, transparency, disclosure, remembrance. So we have already started to understand what the line joining all this concept is and the prevention and efforts on the righteous. And these topics have been dealt with by Senator Mrs. Segre, that we're really honored of having here with us today. And we always use that to introduce in her with great affection, also remembering some pearls of education, because we always believe that the strength of the words of Senator Segre is moving education and fostering it, not only for youngsters. And let me ask Senator Segre and the President of Gariwo, Mr. Nissim, to take a seat here on the podium. And we will be talking about the meaning of hatred, indifference, remembrance, and how all that is related for prevention of genocide. First of all, good afternoon everybody. I'm really happy to see this hall full of people, because when it comes to this very important topic, sometimes it is boring to listen to us talking about good, the righteous. And a day like this one, like the few last ones that we have seen, where TV news are bringing us back to something that we would have never imagined, not even from far away in Europe, which is so close to us. The noise of cannons, houses that have been destroyed, people who died, and people who cry. I thought about the 4 nights of the apocalypse, because what is now missing? We have already had a pandemic, war, hatred, death, hunger. Unfortunately, I am one of the few ones all around the world considering that the righteous are not only important historically, it is somebody I remember the voices of, their faces, but also their modest attire and their peaceful attitude in the fear of being shot and being killed if you helped, or a Jew, for instance, but also youngsters. I was quite in disbelief looking at what was happening, and I was not prepared to tragedy. So when I started hearing about the righteous, too many years had elapsed, because righteous already existed at Yad Vashem. We had them in our mind or in the hearts of those who had few righteous with them, and many people who were not righteous, were unfair. And so there were so many of the latter that it was hard to remember their faces, because these women and men did not deserve to be called men and women. And there were very few ones who made the choice, who were not indifferent, who can never be forgotten. For those, one tombstone is not enough, but also the portrait of their life is not sufficient, because they were very simple individuals. They were not the big heroes known in history. They were especially individuals that personally I they would have disappeared if I were not here to remember them. But these were the people who did not turn their glance elsewhere. And so it is fair to have a garden with flowers all around the world, not to forget them. I personally can be blamed for something serious. When I was helped by the righteous, I did not think about the risks, how many risks they were taking, and how righteous they were. I was used to living with righteous people. And it was almost normal for me, because I had friends or some other people who behaved like that. And so I did not actually do my duty completely. I did not show my gratitude. And throughout the years, I understood and I really decided to sanctify, to use a word that never occurs to me. And because helping somebody was an act, a deed of heroism. And back then, I did not understand it. I did not comprehend it. But my long life led me not to forget them. And I'm also grateful to my friend Gabriele, because they are in the garden right now. This morning, with youngsters, I remembered the youngsters of Kiev, Neapolis, and Odessa, who had to deal with this terrible disaster that was generated by evil individuals. And I also talk about youngsters in Moscow demonstrating against war, and that were captured in some means there, some tanks. And so I think that we need to really catch all moral resistance forms on the scene, and we must be careful about that. So I believe that many righteous exist in this scenario, and we will meet them and we will recognize them in the future. And we must, of course, think about all these people, because it will be those individuals that will take us outside of the abyss. And these are the people we must refer to. Indeed, in the history of genocide and of tragedies, there are always human beings that do miracles, and we can talk about that. So I think that this is the glance we need to have now. And I would like to thank Senator Boldrini for her proposals, for the proposals that will be presented to the Parliament. And I can tell you what Gariwo will do, because we have created a national pathway and an international pathway that has taken two individuals as a reference, two individuals who have left a trace in the 20th century. One was Moshe Besky, and I am honored because today we have somebody who worked with him for 25 years, Mr. Paldiel of the Department of the Righteous of Yad Vashem. So Moshe Besky had an insight that we needed to remove from oblivion of history all those who had taken a responsibility vis-a-vis of Shoah, of the Holocaust. But he said something more. We always need to identify those who, in dark times of humanity, do something. And when Moshe Besky talked about the righteous, dealt with a topic that should be surveyed even more, because the righteous are not saints, they are human beings. They made a choice, a decision. So you can become righteous because you have made a choice, a decision, not because you are a saint and you want to, of course, give up everything. But you do that because at a certain point you take responsibility, and when one talks about the righteous, one needs to talk about the possibility of prevention of evil, because evil can be prevented when there is a responsibility of human rights. And so, regarding Moshe Besky, we decided to create these gardens of the righteous, and this was born in Europe, and now also in Italy. We are proposing that to other countries, and we have talked about the possibility of having the Day of the Righteous also in Greece with the mayor of Saloniki, and we are now working for the Garden of the Righteous in Rwanda and also in the ghetto of Warsaw. So the sense of all these gardens is to try and give human beings some moral examples so that human beings can take their responsibility. So by telling the stories of the righteous, you can explain to youngsters and to citizens how that it's possible to act against evil. And this is a very important point in our ideology. And the second one is a link, the link with an extraordinary intuition, insight of a man. We have honored him at Milan Garden. Raphael Lemkin, after the Holocaust and after his family was destroyed, after he had fled to the States and tried to persuade to turn the Second World War into a fight to defend Jews. So when he went to see, he decided to write a letter to be sent to Roosevelt, and Roosevelt told him, be patient, something will be done. So be patient. And of course, he could not be patient after leaving Poland. But after the destruction of his people, because he was a Polish Jew, what did he do? Well, he managed to have the UN approving a new moral commandment, because the word genocide did not exist. The hybrid genus from Greek, Sidious side, from Latin, is something he invented, and he did that, and he managed to persuade every head of state, minister, to vote this resolution, UN resolution in 1948, that to call humanity to prevent genocide. And so in one of the several discussions and exchange moments at the UN, Raphael Lemkin said, when some people are subject to genocide, what will happen is not important. They are not interested in having victims remembered. People who are subject to genocide want to prevent that because the idea of prevention is very important. And this is the great teaching. I do believe that it's really important to remember. We do that every day in schools with youngsters. But what is the important moment for victims is that you can prevent AGAM, the cultural tool of the UN Convention on Genocide Prevention. So what are the guardians of the righteous for? They can warn human beings on evil. And in my opinion, this is our task. This is our job. We have to make it possible for this moral commandment of human beings is not an empty word. Unfortunately, we can talk about failures, and we heard Mrs. Boldrini talk about what happened in other countries, in Cambodia, in Darfur, and in other places, including Rwanda, and of course, getting to present days, we don't know what will happen. So we have to imagine that the gardens we build, because in the gardens we can find the fight against hatred, education of youngsters, the possibility to have moral individuals being known. These gardens are not a place for remembrance. They are a a place for society for genocide prevention. And this is the message that we are trying to convey. And we are a foundation with some people who are passionate who tried to trigger this sparkle. This is the 10th European Day of the Righteous, but let me say that this is only the beginning. I would like for our country and for Italy and for the European Union to actually accept this message that we are building, because we aim at creating some material possibilities within society so that society is aware of genocides and can be activated. So these are the gardens, and this is a dream. But let me make a reference to Raphael Lemkin and Antigone. When Antigone wanted to, of course, help her brother, she said, I will act based on unwritten rules of gods. She wanted to bury her brother. And so this moral law could exist in the world. So what did Lemkin say? If a minority could be considered, they will resort to this, of course, international law. So if one goes against the right of human beings in a country, and if one goes against morality, what can citizens do? They can refer to such international laws, and this means that one has to disobey some orders and some unfair laws in a country and not universal principles. This is our goal. At an international level, there must be an opportunity to in a place, so we need to live in a place where human rights are not violated. And so the idea of Antigone was really important. We can indeed make reference to the UN Convention, and there are some important issues that have been, of course, examined and reflected upon throughout the years, and Lemkin had to make a compromise when he submitted this bill to the United Nations with some cultural reference, with references to some political parties. So this is the highest expression of international responsibility after Shoah, because this means this one. So we need to have an international community following a moral law accepted by all nations. And such moral law always commits individuals to fight against genocide. Thank you. Thank you, Gabriele. We will go on talking about righteous and genocide. And let me ask Mr. Paldiel, as we have already heard by Gabriele and Nissim, can you please come to the pew? And let me thank also Liliana Segre. So as we have already heard, Mr. Paldiel, were for 23 years the director of the Department of the Righteous at Vashem. And it was an honor to have him at the ceremony of the plaque for the new righteous for the plaque. And it's an honor. Paldiel, the floor is yours. Mr.
People copy that, and people think that this is the right thing to do. Of competition, of struggling, survival of the fittest, that this is the essence of life on earth. We have to show contrary examples. The lessons of the righteous that are displayed in the garden of the righteous is that I have already stated at the beginning. You don't have to be a good person, a saint, throughout all your life to do a saintly deed. You don't always have to be a Saint Francis of Assisi, just maybe once in your lifetime. You don't have to be a total saint 100%, but you can do a good deed. You can be a Francis of Assisi just at least once. And it's a possibility for everyone waiting to happen. The Gariwo Honoraries show us that man's capacity for goodness and combating evil is larger, it's much larger than originally thought. Gariwo's work must therefore continue to give us more examples of acts of goodness instead of constantly repeating acts of evil, constantly showing us in the media about bad behavior. That is in order to create a better and more humane society and a better world. And therefore, the work of Gariwo is to be blessed and congratulated, and hopefully to continue, and more such gardens will be created in other parts of the world, and for the purpose of creating that better and more humane world that we all hope for. Thank you very much.
Grazie.
Thank you, Mr. Paldiel. Today we should have had another special woman as a guest, the advisor for prevention of genocide, the special advisor of the UN, Elena Nderitu. Unfortunately, considering the moment, the scenario and international engagements of this period prevented her from being here with us at the conference, but talking about righteous people for her office, department, and for herself is extremely important, especially when it comes to a righteous like Raphael Lemkin. And as we have already heard from Mr. Nissim, he was the one who invented the word genocide. And so Ms. Nderitu wanted to send us a video that we will now watch to try and highlight the importance of genocide prevention and of the Polish jurist Raphael Lemkin. We can maybe sit here with the audience so we can see it better.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, it is with great humility that I speak at this solemn and moving occasion to pay tribute to the righteous, to their cause, their sacrifice, their memory, as well as to the memory of all those who perished and whose lives could not be saved. These were victims of one of the most egregious expression of hatred the world has ever witnessed, the Holocaust, where more than 6 million people were intentionally targeted and killed because of their identity in execution of a plan that was designed and operationalized deliberately and systematically. In the face of horror, the righteous stood up to defend the inalienable right of each human being to live in dignity, to live in peace and safety, to live. Often, they stood up at great risk for themselves, yet they chose the right path, and their example continues resonating in our imperfect world in which such acts of heroism continue to be necessary. Indeed, In a world where atrocity crimes continue being committed, we must continue to appeal to the responsibility of states, regional organizations, and of course, international organizations, including the one I represent. But we must also remember that steps taken by individuals can generate change. The righteous constitute a vivid example of this, and this is, in my view, their utmost legacy. Honoring also requires us to go beyond remembering. Honoring also involves learning the lessons of what went wrong, why a society walked the dark path towards condoning or accepting the commission of atrocity crimes, and the lessons that history teaches us are important for our future. Knowing what happened in the past and who was responsible and why is essential to help prevent recurrence, to put in place early warning mechanisms, and to develop strategies for prevention. Ladies and gentlemen, today we are also honoring Raphael Lemkin, who did precisely that. He observed the dynamics of violence, which was targeted not to an individual or group of individuals because of what they did, which would not justify acts of violence because of who they were. The crimes that Raphael Lemkin observed and studied were crimes against entire groups on the basis of their identity. Crimes against all the members of a group of people. Genocide. Raphael Lemkin spared no effort to mobilize support and ultimately achieve the codification of this crime. The perseverance of a single individual led to the codification and the adoption of the 1948 Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide. Punishment, yes, but also prevention. As Raphael Lemkin observed, and as we fully learned from the Holocaust and other historical experiences, genocide and other atrocity crimes are not usually single or random events. Instead, they tend to develop in a dynamic process. If we understand the causes and precursors of these crimes and can identify the warning signs or risk factors that can lead to or enable their commission, it follows that we can also identify measures that can be taken by states, the international community, and also individuals to prevent these crimes. This is a collective obligation that we all must work for. Ladies and gentlemen, remembrance and lesson learning sets the first stone in the pillar of prevention of future crimes. As Raphael Lemkin knew all too well, and the 1948 Convention embodies, justice constitutes another stone in that pillar. Accountability for genocide and other atrocity crimes is central to the prevention of future crimes. This is why the 1948 Convention is so essential, and this is why its universal ratification remains so important. So today, I renew my call to all states that have not ratified this central piece of international human rights law to take this step without delay. I also call on the vast majority of states which have ratified this international instrument to fully endorse it by taking action in the face of the threats and allegations of commission of international crimes we are seeing today. Lastly, I cannot but raise a voice to encourage that we never let down our guard in the face of increasing attempts to deny, distort, or minimize the Holocaust and genocides committed in the past. Holocaust and genocide denial are real and must be countered. I call on everyone from states to individuals in positions of high political or social responsibility to to individual citizens to condemn and counter all instances of denial or minimization of atrocity crimes committed in the past across the world. This is especially important in spaces where healing and trust remain challenged and where the risk of commission of such crimes in the future is all too present. But as the Holocaust also taught us, no society is immune. The extent of vitriol, dehumanization, and hate speech against members of different communities or groups should raise alarm and trigger immediate action to counter such narratives. Hate speech constitutes a risk factor of atrocity crimes. It is present and growing in our societies. We must spare no effort to counter it with messages of tolerance, inclusion, and mutual understanding. This is, too, another lesson we can learn from the righteous we are honoring today. They demonstrated this commitment with their actions. Let us honor them and let us honor the victims of the crimes they fought against with our own words and action in our world today. I thank you very much.
We are very happy to listen, that we had the chance to listen this message, and we are talking about the righteous and all those who have acted against this genocide. And they have proven, as Senator Segre said, that it's always possible to make a choice, a decision. They have been the guardians of humanity somehow. And in the stories that we honored at Monte Stella Garden, we saw the importance of the action of individual righteous to try and change history and the direction followed by history. So we'll start knowing those who have been honored this morning to try and understand why the stories of all these people can teach something on prevention of genocide. Starting from Henry Morgenthau, American ambassador, who had to, of course, face the Armenian genocide. And we'll do that with two important guests, the great grandson of Henry Morgenthau, Mr. Christopher London, accompanied by the Honorary Consul of the Republic of Armenia in Italy, Pietro Kuciukian. Please come to the podium. Let me start with the first question for the great-grandson of Ambassador Henry Morgenthau. Let's talk about this ambassador, this very important example. Ambassador Morgenthau observed and saw what was happening to the Armenian people and tried in all possible ways to denounce what was happening. But the world around him did not listen to him. So what does it mean? How did the world react? And let me ask this to Mr. London.
So, Ambassador Morgenthau began his post in a conventional job as ambassador, and the world was at peace. And then the world deteriorated, and the European powers began to go to war with one another. And the German ambassador was advising the Turks to ally with them, and so the other European powers vacated Constantinople, and Ambassador Morgenthau was thrust into the position of representing those various governments as well as the United States. And at that time, the suggestion was made that the Armenian people who were Christian in what was developing as the first Muslim state with a Muslim, sole Muslim identity, which was a sort of novel idea in the 20th century, they decided to exclude the Christian and people who were living there. So that was a large group of Armenian people who had settled in Turkey for many, many centuries and were vitally integrated into the country and its history and its cultural identity. And it also included Greeks who had settled there. And so the people in the north of Turkey were first impacted, and they were driven from their homes, and their property was seized, and then many were killed, men and boys first, and the women and children were marched for very many miles, inhumanely, not fed, and when the opportunity presented itself, they were shot and buried in mass graves without marking. And that continued, and they moved further south. This was because the Muslim governors of the empire had greatly weakened in their ability to rule. A weak son was appointed to run the country and so forth. And the three men who were running the country wanted to secure their power, partly by finding a group that they could blame and victimize in this process. So they also would have benefited from the wealth of the Armenian people, because once you exterminate the entire family, then they were able to try and seize all the life insurance policies of these people, which was proposed to Ambassador Morgenthau, and he refused to help facilitate that. And it was clear that he needed to help people escape. So in 1915, when this crisis peaked, I suppose, or crested, or began to peak, he worked very hard to publicize the story. And my family are German Jewish, meaning we settled in New York in the mid-19th century. My family were prosperous, and with these other group of people that were in that sort of world, they formed a small circle. So one of the people that we were friendly with was a man named Adolf Oakes. He owned the New York Times. And Henry Morgenthau was able to communicate with him very directly, and 145 newspaper articles were published in the New York Times alone to make people aware of the Armenian crisis. You couldn't miss that if you were reading the paper at that time. These things are all published in two books that Ambassador Morgenthau wrote. Then he also raised, through friends, in about a month's time, 3 weeks, something like that, $100 million, which is a considerable amount of money in that era. And he created a fund to try and help the Armenian people escape and survive once they left, if they were able to escape. He also saved people and harbored them in the embassy. He provided funds for them. He helped them get on boats and to escape the country. So it was a very uncomfortable job that he was given all of a sudden, and it also was something that the American government wasn't totally comfortable with, and so he was not asked to be reappointed as ambassador, and in 1916 he ceased service and he came back to the United States. So that's pretty much the kind of work that he did, and then what he did after that very carefully was he documented what had occurred, who he had met, the conversations he had with people in government, and so on in several books. And then he went to work for the Greek people, again, for the United States government, but not as an ambassador, but as a negotiator. So it's the formula that you can see repeated throughout the 20th century, and now, I suppose, in the 21st, quite poignantly, of creating a sense of tribal identity within a group, and then once you have the attention of one tribe, then you get them to turn against the other people in their country, and then you seize their assets and you demean them as a group, and you are able to remove them comfortably without feeling guilty. And you have a political success in the process of doing that. That was another reason they did that. So I hope that answers the question.
Volevo adesso chiedere al console Kuciukian, dopo questo appunto anche inquadramento.
Kuciukian, after this answer describing Ambassador Morgenthau, what, in your opinion, does the story of this righteous mean? And what does talking about the story of these righteous, but also about Segre, the Armenian genocide, mean for genocide prevention? First of all, let me introduce Her Excellency, the Ambassador of the Republic of Armenia in Italy, who is now working to also have a Day of the Righteous in Armenia. Because in Armenia we already have a garden, another one that we are now building in Yerevan. And so if you want to say something to our assembly, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Consul. This is a very important day, and so I would like to speak Armenian, if you allow me to, and she will translate. First of all, let me thank you for this kind invitation. Let me thank Mr. Nissim, Gariwo's president, for this kind of invitation. It is the second time that I've taken part in Gariwo's events, and it's an honor. I don't think that I can say that I know all the work and all the efforts made by Gariwo, but based on what I've known so far, I've found out and discovered many of the activities carried out by the association. And forgive me for using a not very convenient word, but let me say that in this framework, the word genocide must not be monopolized, must not be used exclusively. Let me stress that because based on what I've seen and based on what I have observed, all types of genocide and all crimes against humanity are considered on the same level. And this is very important for prevention of genocide. And this is why I would like to thank President Nissim and also the Honorary Consul, Mr. Kuciukian, because they are giving visibility to all genocides without making any distinction based on their scope and based on their position. I do apologize, but I'm really, really emotional in this moment because we have here an important relative of Ambassador Morgenthau, and so the presence of the righteous for us, as Ambassador Morgenthau was, gives us hope and gives us new light and the hope for our days, for the dark days of the future. And let me take advantage of this situation, considering the presence of Mrs. Boldrini, a member of the Chamber of Deputies of the Italian Republic. Let me express my thanks, wholehearted thanks for her commitment, and for the commitment made by all other parliamentarians who have promoted and voted in favor of the resolution to recognize a genocide that took place in 2019 at the Chamber. Thank you very much. Thank you so much. Thank you, Madam Ambassador. And considering that, maybe a short answer, 30 seconds, about who Morgenthau was. I went with Christoph to New York, with Christopher to New York. Well, we have seen the pictures. This is not something new you're telling us. Well, but what is interesting is that something that I was told by the ambassador is that Samantha Power, who was an advisor of the U.S. government but also ambassador at the UN, held a conference in Washington, and she talked about the origin of the issue of genocide, and she mentioned Lemkin. Raphael Lemkin was a young philologist who was in Berlin at a very peculiar moment. It was 1919. An Armenian person, Solomon Teleria, killed the killer of Armenians, and he was tried immediately in 3 days. And this was surprising. Raphael Lemkin was there because he heard all witnesses and the massacre, the extermination of Armenians, and he was obsessed by the fact that a government could have the right of death or life on their citizens. So he studied, and for 20 years, he studied the Armenian issue, and then he found the term genocide. And as we have already heard, He went to the UN in 1948. The United States, well, it took 10 years to the United States to ratify that. And the day when this was ratified, Raphael Lemkin was on a bench, waiting outside, $10 in a pocket, and this is where he died. But what is important for prevention is that the word genocide is always, of course, valuable, and they could act at any time, but provided government gave its consent. And in 2002 in Rome, the Permanent Court of People was established, giving the opportunity to also act outside the states. Milosevic and Karadzic are part of it. So let me stop here and let me get to... You must be quick. You must be quick. Why? I think that people are happy because there are 6 more people who have to take the floor and the dinner has been booked. And before meeting Gabriele, there already was an International Committee for the Righteous and the Armenians that I founded in 1985. And based on that, I was looking for righteous all around the world. Until a lady, an Armenian lady who lived here in Milan, told me that the ambassador, Morgenthau, had saved her. And so I got interested in that, and after a long investigation, I decided to go and see the family, his family in New York. So we went to Mount Pleasant, and Christopher told me that it's called Walhalla Cemetery, right? And we have taken some ground. There are pictures, you can see them now. We have taken some land, some ground there, and the rabbi was there, and there was a ceremony, and I've taken that to Armenia, and it was taken there to be put in the wall of remembrance, in the wall of memory. But why is he important? Why is he so important? Because probably it is one of the rarest occasions when killers and the savior meet and they keep talking. So they exchange ideas, and Morgenthau met these people almost every day, and he tried to understand. And they told him, well, you are a Jew, why are you getting interested in Christians, in Armenians? And he answered, Mr. Morgenthau answered, well, it's a matter of humanity. There isn't any matter of ethnicity or race. But then he asks, why do you kill Armenians? Why do you exterminate people? Why do you kill the elderly, children, and youngsters? And he said, and Talat said, the innocents of today will be the culprits of tomorrow. And the pivotal moment, which is really annoying for Henry Morgenthau the first, we have here the fourth, was when Armenians had been massacred, had been exterminated, and he went to see Tanatorum there, and he said, now that no more Armenians exist, insurance policies they had with American companies, life insurance, must be given to us. They're ours, Turkey's. So a little after, he went back to America, and he was really impressed, and he also wrote his memoirs that were translated into Italian, publishing house Morini. It was a book about that. But that was not the end, because he started recovering orphans, and he founded a Mir Society with other people to, of course, raise huge amounts of money, like $1 billion, to try and help all these poor Armenians, orphans, who were scattered throughout the country. He also got interested in Jews. He was not a convinced Zionist, but he went to Poland with the pogrom to help Jews. But there are many more things that I could talk about, and our moderator keeps hinting to stopping. I cannot go on. Thank you so much. Thank you to our guests. I was not doing anything. We have a 40-minute delay, so this is why. Please, for this very last moment of dialogue on genocides, Laura Rossi, Godeliev, Mukazarazi, and Dolkun Isa, please come to the podium to talk about the genocide of yesterday, today, with all those direct witnesses that we have already met this morning. Starting from Professor Rossi, let me give her a microphone. Professor Rossi is a professor of Russian literature in Milan, and she's a partner of Memorial Italy. We are talking about Russia, of course, and we have done it in the last few years for the issue of Ukraine, but let's not forget that something more happened in Russia, and Memorial was closed some days ago. Unfortunately, the appeal was rejected. And Professor Rossi, can you tell us quickly what Memorial is and what kind of activities it has organized for remembrance and what has happened in the last few months? Thank you for this opportunity. I am a member of Memorial Italy, which is an independent Italian association that is inspired to the principles of the Russian Memorial, and it now has the form of an international memorial that was, of course, liquidated. It was dissolved. So what kind of consequences will be produced for the library and for the building hosting it in Moscow? This will be clear only in 10 days. We don't know yet. So far, the staff has worked in the museum, in the library, and also in the archives that are very valuable for Russian scholars, for international scholars. And only in 10 days, we will know what will happen. And we risk having seizure, but of course we are afraid they could be seized, and digitization is underway, but many of the tools cannot be digitized completely. The memorial was born during the years of perestroika, Gorbachev's perestroika, based on the initiative of Peace Nobel Prize scientist Sakharov, who was confined, was isolated many years, and then he went back, and he was the first president of Memorial. And then it grew, and it acquired international value only because these topics apply to all humanity, not only to Russia, not because it was born upon Western initiatives and because it was against the regime. It was a spontaneous initiative of citizens who wanted to clarify what had happened to their relatives. So they wanted to recreate some destinies that had got lost and they wanted to accumulate some materials and some documents. So the fact that Memorial had to declare that he was a foreign agent that was accused of not respecting the rules is something that was likely to lead to the accusation of not complying with it. So in this very moment, International Memorial was closed, and the one for human rights is still pending a ruling, and we already know what it will be. And some independent premises survive in Russia, but also some external ones in France, in Italy, and especially the Italian one, because it does not depend on Memorial, and it does share all principles and collaborate with that. So Memorial, in the, of course, public minister discourse asking for closing of Memorial, the actual crime Memorial was accused of was not linked to procedure. It was linked to ideology, that is to mudding the Russian people by disseminating lies. So one can also understand the process of elimination and also tainted memory in current Russia, something that we have also seen in the words of President Putin talking about Ukraine, that applied to the process of remembrance in the country. It is true. The issue was memory, remembrance. So when it comes to people, also common people, not only scholars, the need to reconstruct history and to remember what had happened in Soviet Union, but in particular during Stalin's period, still exists. But one always has to make a difference between private and official plan. So at the official level, no discourse of memory has ever existed. And sometimes the official discourse has tried to create a glorious story, and this has demonstrated the attitude of being part of the enemy. And so we can say that this part of Memorial was a part of the process, and it was not necessarily linked to that. And so this morning at Montestella Garden, we honored Mrs. Ginsburg, and we remember her work because she actually talked about that. So what is the role of Ginsburg, Mrs. Ginsburg, in the discourse of this, and what can we do for prevention of genocide on the discourse of remembrance memory? Thank you. In 1967, they were among the first memoirs of Stalinist purges, and so they were, Solzhenitsyn was reflecting on that, and she was one of the first women writing, and this proved the destiny. She was talking about the destiny of women in lagers, and they were considered as the women, the wives or children of the people. She was considered as an enemy of the people, and she had involved her husband and her parents. And her testimony is really important because she tried to remember everything. So her huge work is very accurate, detailed, and was proven to be true. And of course, people like you or not, but she did believe in good and in the possibility of winning against evil and resisting in resilience. And so this was but this can be a testimony, and maybe this the fact that her surname was that, well, she was not persecuted as a Jew, but during the war she was saved, and she could prove that she was Russian. She was Jew, but Russian, and that was one of the very rare cases, and so she was not a righteous, and she was not a victim or a savior of the Holocaust, but this proves this is a testimony for humanity regardless of her religious orientation, and she also proved her faith in good, and her of course positive humor can be a tool to prevent all that. Well, it's hard to express, but it can save us somehow. Thank you very much. Thank you, Professor. Moving now to a different story, to another woman in a different context with the Rwanda genocide. It is an honor for me to have her here with me and to talk with Godeliev Mukazarazi, because she was incredibly brave, and so I'm really happy to be here with her. So my first question is based on a word that we have repeated, that is reconciliation. Her story proves that reconciliation is important, and it must pass through recognition of crimes and international justice. Can you tell us something about that? Can you tell us something about that, and also about the journey that you have made with your husband and for reconciliation and justice? Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. As you say, Rwanda, reconciliation must necessarily pass through recognition of crimes and the culprits. As you said, this involved my husband, my children, and this is a reconciliation when we actually committed ourselves due to the conditions of oppression that we have experienced. And so this reconciliation is based on the search for truth, on the understanding of truth through dialogue, of course, but also it aims at giving an opportunity to achieve a reconciliation, and based on which the people who have experienced all these moments are preparing for that. And this can allow building unity. And all these are crucial points in this journey, as in Rwanda, this will lead to the obligation to recognize more crimes against humanity. And so we have started the process of reconciliation where people can get access to justice and they can be listened to. They, of course, were dehumanized. These people were dehumanized, and what we can actually do is to ask for forgiveness, and this is a justice, an idea of justice which is central in this process of national reconciliation. So the process continues, and Godeliev was the protagonist, and this also took place in 1998, and it was important because it was linked to the genocide of 1948, and for the very first time, this was the first process trial where rape was considered as a crime. So my question is, how did you feel after the ruling, and what happened? After the ruling, as you said, this trial continued until 1998, and the ruling was given on the 10th of October with this sentence to life prison for the massacre that was perpetrated. And this also included the direct involvement of these murderers. And so the idea was recognized of committing a genocide. The court has also recognized the crime of genocide that was committed with the intent of destroying entirely or in part the ethnic group. And so that was used as a tool for intimidation, discrimination, sanction, and control, and destruction of somebody, of a person. And concerning my feelings, nothing special, only a feeling of pain. Remember when prisoners were listened to, and the witnesses have not always been treated in the right way, and there were some witnesses who also lived in extreme poverty. And sometimes these witnesses were included in they have been welcomed by a Canadian delegation, and in Rwanda a new network of support was created. So I thought about repeated violations and violences, cases of violence to my family. They killed my daughter, Angelica, who was supposed to be a witness in a trial. So the Office of Witness Protection tried to silence me, and often children were used for this purpose. And I also thought about the other families where witnesses were killed. and those who have to judge those charged with genocide and of other serious violations of international rules and what was perpetrated in Rwanda. So those who are responsible for all these acts were covered by international projects and between the 1st of January and the 30th of December of 1994. Of course, people who are alive, the witnesses are important, but they have not always been treated, as I said, as they should have. And in some cases, they have been imprisoned in detention centers, whereas others were treated well in pleasant places. So this is another injustice. So the difference of the living condition between the witnesses and those who were charged, those who were accused. And also, security was not always ensured, and so many were killed in Rwanda. And many people had to undergo some humiliating actions. So after the ruling, what can we say that has changed? Well, some cases of violence have been recognized. The intention, the intent of destroying a group with this is genocide. And assistance is given to the victims. And the government, the state, has ordered the private and public sector to contribute to repairs. After 20 years of exercise, this has been done through 19 million euros for women, for healthcare, for orphans and for children, and many houses were built. However, there's something specific in that. It is important, it is fundamental to consider the specific aspects when it comes to rapes, because it is estimated that for the genocide in Rwanda in 1994, between 250,000 and 500,000 women were raped. Many forced marriages took place without considering the more comprehensive effects on children, the effects of sexual violence. They have all been clear. So this, of course, applies to the entire civil society. And of course, we need to help the victims of sexual violence. And of course, the association has also tried to help women in Rwanda. What does Segota do? And can you maybe say what is the message? So what is the message for prevention? Segota's activities are concentrated, starting from that, on the creation of a society where dignity is important, where people, women and children are treated as they should. And the goal is to promote activities of peace, reconciliation, and promotion of the human rights and the rights of men, women, and vulnerable kids, and to reach the goals of the process of reconciliation. Segota has some specific plans and action plans that are implemented in a very complex and timely manner. We have 4 pillars. We organize some forum where we try to involve actors and groups to deal with some topics including peace, conscience, reconciliation. And all these women can also attend some therapeutical ways and reconciliation pathways and individual counseling projects. We also organize workshops and some journeys, some pathways for youngsters in camps with the possibility of following treatment and of course, organizing some activities involving everybody. And furthermore, other activities are carried out to try and give individual counseling opportunities to youngsters who can form some groups and can, for instance, follow small projects. Our approach is family-focused. We organize some workshops with wives and husbands, the participants of the different forums, but also some couples, to try and teach about the role of both of them by combining women and men, and also to foster peace in family unions. And so we also organize some house visits. Every year we organize a special day which is called the festival, when we focus on the work with the children and other members of the family. And we organize walks to stimulate resilience of kids and women. We also have other groups, other specific groups, some activities that we carry out among the communities, within the community. Local communities play a role in that, in collaboration with other actors. And so we mobilize and raise awareness of local authorities, trying to organize some community level projects, some nights for families and some meetings. And therefore, for the prevention of genocide, what is the most important message? Well, the most important message, well, let me say, it's not only a message. First of all, we have a message, and the most important part is the obligation for governments and for the civil society to integrate people in the fight against genocide, because citizens, people, youngsters must contribute to preventing crimes against humanity in the future. And they must also strengthen the reflection on human values and the rights of humans. Besides the fight against crimes, so besides what governments envisage and the organization, this preliminary approach is crucial for actions on the field to try and encourage governments to act with military and other types of means. So the governments and all the countries must understand that and must act after seeing the very first signs, so that they can save lives and they can support the population. And they can also implement other projects for fair distribution of power. And another message is crucial. We need to, of course, prevent events from being exploited in different ways so that one does not forget and can prevent new genocides. Thank you very much. Thank you so much. And now we will close this long journey throughout genocides and violations of human rights by getting to to the last few days. A new genocide is evident to everybody, the one against the Uyghur population. We talked about that and we remembered Professor Ilham Tohti, and this morning, but we also have him today as well, we have the president of the World Uyghur Congress, Dolkun Isa. And let me ask you, what is the situation today?
Such a wonderful conference and organizing such an event. Well, the situation of the Uyghurs today is dire. Today, 3 million Uyghurs, at least 3 million Uyghurs, Kazakh, other ethnic people in East Turkestan, in China, and arbitrarily detained and suffering in the concentration camps. They are subject to politically indoctrinate, forcefully to denounce national and religious identity, and forced labor, sexual abuse, rape, and also they are and physical and mental torture all the time. You know, this very difficult to get information what is going on really in the concentration camp. But now some camp survivors already released and escape, came to the free world. They are made testimony because they are foreign citizen, Uyghur origin. They are told a horrible story. What's going on in the camps, concentration camp, you know? So many death case was happening. And well, even there is so many intellectuals, women, football player, arts, retired women, every kind of people, because of just the ethnicity, because they are Uyghurs, because of their Kazakh. This is the situation in the concentration camp. You have to show the loyalty to the Chinese Communist Party. If you drink one cup of water, you have to say, oh, thanks Chinese Communist Party, thanks Xi Jinping. Without Chinese Communist Party, without Xi Jinping, no life. You have to say this, you have to show your loyalty to the Chinese Communist Party. This is happening today in 21st century. But most of them people talking about the concentration camp, but the people who is living outside the concentration camp is also very horrible. I personally, I'm victim of such a family. I left my country 28 years ago. Since I have left my country, I never visit to my countries. I never have seen my parents, my brother and my sister, because I couldn't return to my hometown. I'm German citizen. I invite to my parents, my brother to the Germany, but Chinese government never allowed them to visit to Germany. No, impossible, because last 5 years, since 2017, all Uyghurs who live in exile, Germany, Europe, United States, everywhere, we have lost contact to family members. My last telephone communication, my mother is middle of April 2017, 5 years ago. Since then, last 5 years, we got only heartbreaking news. 2018, after 1 year later, communication cut down. I got heartbreaking news, my mother died. So many media called me, what condition your mother passed away? I didn't know idea. I called, after I got this news, I had trying to communicate to my family, but I couldn't access. Later, a couple of weeks later, I learned from the media, my mother detained, she was put one of the concentration camp in China. After 1 year later, she died on the concentration camp. She was 17, 8 years old lady. Can you imagine? She is no politician. She is the very ordinary housewife. She is because the punishment, because she is the Uyghur, she is my mother. This is the reason only. Just 1 year later, 2020, I got second heartbreaking news. My father passed away. I learned this news from the Chinese media. Last year, I got another heartbreaking news. My younger brother sentenced to life. My older brother, he's a mathematics professor. He sentenced to 24 years. This is my family tragedy. It was happening today. My story is not unique. All Uyghurs who living in exile have the same problem today. And today, we don't exactly number, but Bitter Winter, based in Rome, Italy, this organization report around 800,000 to 1 million Uyghur children separate from family. They are targeted, indoctrinated, changing name, you know, and transferred to the other provinces of China. Around 1 million Uyghur transferred to the China to forced labor. The Italian company, German company, US company make business China, and the profit was a forced labor. Today, this 22% is cotton. Globally, 22% is cotton production from forced labor, from Uyghur forced labor. 85% cotton in China from Uyghur forced labor. This is happening today in my hometown, unfortunately.
Appunto, anche dalle sue parole.
And also based on your words and what you said, you have reported, you have denounced the education camps, and you have undergone some violence, and this is why you're living in exile now. Where can you find your strength, the courage to go on in your battle?
Well, I told already this story. This is the happening today. Unfortunately, most of the world is continuous silence. Of course, we have seen some positive response. This genocide started 2016, almost 5 years. 5 years. At the beginning, no one listening to us. No media reported nearly to this situation. But we have continually educated. We talk on this issue. However, now we have seen some positive steps. Now, 9 parliaments around the world recognize the Uyghur genocide. And this is the US, Canada, Netherlands, Lithuania, Belgium, UK, and Ireland. This 9 parliament already, and French as well, recognize the Uyghur genocide. So this is to give us some hope. This is to encourage to us. Secondly, and today, we believe, even today, so many young generation in the Garden of Righteous ceremony was happening today. So many young generation, teenagers listening to us. They ask question us. This brings us a hope. So, but just silent, because still hundreds of countries, millions of people is silenced because of some money. Today, so many, they say, so many European countries, so many European companies continue business with China. It is not correct time to make business with China. Business should not be business as usual. Because people is dire. People's life should not be less important than money. But unfortunately, today, democratic voice is very weak, but authoritarian countries' voice stronger than democratic voice, unfortunately. Today, Chinese government trying to monopolize the international human rights system. try and misuse international organization, for example, Interpol, and trying to manipulate the UN Human Rights Council. Chinese long arm getting everywhere. Today I'm lucky, I'm talking here. 2017, 4 years ago, 5 years ago, I was detained in Italy. I'm a German citizen. I'm a European citizen. Despite of this, I was detained in Rome. I was invited senator campaign to the press conference. I was arriving to the room just 20 minutes before starting the conference. I was detained more than 20 Italian police. Can you imagine this kind of situation happening in this country? But today, I'm free speaking here. I'm so lucky. Thank you for all. And this support is very important for us, but it's not good enough. 75 years ago, Holocaust was happening. World leader promised never again. But never again is happening again today. And in this moment, this situation. So that's why this never again should not be empty promise. So all countries who signed 1948 International Convention on the Genocide should be all country has a legal obligation. All human beings have a moral obligation. Company, all human beings should be take action. We have some positive response today. This is the give us hope. This is to encourage all advocacy.
Grazie.
One very short question. We have a very few minutes to close the conference. So in the light of what we have said so far, what is the importance of remembering the righteous and these individuals who fought against genocide?
Well, as already told, still so many countries and the people still silent in front of this genocide. Silent is meaning is complicity of this genocide, this crime. So I would like to give the message, should be speaking loudly. Should not be, there's only genocide, in front of genocide, should not be naturalism. Some country or some international organization like International Olympic Committee, we are repeatedly making pressure to the International Olympic Committee move to the Beijing Winter Olympic to the other countries. But Olympic Committee didn't listen to us. They are hiding behind of the political naturalism and took place in Beijing. It is a genocidal game. So that's why, so silence is complicity. So every human being should have responsibility to speak out and fight, unite together. Today, this genocide ongoing, unfortunately, we haven't seen any single condemnation of the United Nations Secretary General to genocide. Not single urgent section was happening in UN Human Rights Council because this system control authoritarian regime like China. So that's why I would like to say the important thing is we have to unite it, we have to wake up, we have to broken or silence because China, Russia, that's authoritarian government not only threaten to Uyghurs, Tibet, Hong Kong, some other country. This authoritarian regime is threatening global democracy and the human rights. This is democracy, human rights, and it's a Western value must be protected. Other way, this authoritarian regime really destroyed whole world, and we never stay in wonderful world if another 15 or 30 years.
Grazie. Grazie mille ai nostri ospiti, grazie a voi.
Thank you to our guests. Thank you who followed our live event and the streaming, we would like to conclude the day with the video message, which is very important. It comes from the Garden of the Righteous of Warsaw, and it is a very important support. The Auschwitz Foundation with its director, Wojciech Socewica. Enjoy this video. Have a nice
6 marca 2022 roku obchodzić będziemy po raz 10 już Europejski Dzień Pamięci o Sprawiedliwych. To szczególne święto, ustanowione decyzją Parlamentu Europejskiego z inicjatywy Mediolańskiego Ogrodu Sprawiedliwych Gariwo. W tym dniu upamiętnimy wyjątkowe osoby, które pokazały, że nie godząc się na milczenie, nie godząc się na obojętność, możemy skutecznie sprzeciwić się ludobójstwu i zbrodniom na masową skalę. To są wielkie słowa i wielkie zjawiska, które obserwujemy od końca II wojny światowej, nie tylko w Europie. Ale sens działalności sprawiedliwych sprowadza się do tego, żeby udowodnić, że każdy z nas i każda z nas w momencie próby i poważnego kryzysu humanitarnego może zdecydować się udzielić pomocy, wyciągnąć rękę do tych, którzy jej najbardziej potrzebują. To dowód na to, że wtedy, kiedy dzieje się zło, można zdecydować się pozostać na tej samej stronie ulicy, a nie uciekać przed odpowiedzialnością społeczną. Dziś jest szczególny dzień. 24 lutego o wczesnych godzinach porannych doszło do niespotykanej co najmniej od końca II wojny światowej agresji na suwerenne państwo europejskie, sąsiada Polski, Ukrainę. Wojna, która jest konsekwencją tej agresji, zawsze niesie ze sobą masowe nieszczęście. Głód, wypędzenie, ucieczkę, śmierć bliskich. W tych okolicznościach każdy i każda z nas, a z całą pewnością w Europie, może poszukać możliwości wspierania narodu ukraińskiego. Solidarność, a zatem sprzeciwianie się obojętności i milczeniu leży w zasięgu każdego z nas. W tym szczególnym kontekście warto wspomnieć o dwóch osobach. Petro Chrychorenko i Natalia Gorbaniewska, którzy w 1968 roku sprzeciwili się interwencji wojsk Układu Warszawskiego w Czechosłowacji. Chrychorenko, Ukrainiec z pochodzenia, Gorbaniewska, Rosjanka, pokazali, że własnym zaangażowaniem i własną postawą można w najtrudniejszych nawet okolicznościach funkcjonowania w państwie autorytarnym, totalitarnym postarać się zrobić coś dobrego i pomóc innym narodom i innym osobom. Dzisiaj obie te osoby mają swoje drzewka pamięci w warszawskim Ogrodzie Sprawiedliwych i o nich będziemy pamiętać. Obchodzony po raz 10 Europejski Dzień Sprawiedliwych jest dla nas, dla Fundacji Auschwitz-Birkenau, rokiem szczególnym również z innego powodu. Dokładnie 100 lat temu urodził się Władysław Bartoszewski, fundator Fundacji Auschwitz-Birkenau, który dzięki swojej postawie, aktywności, działalności, w tym w najtrudniejszym okresie, w czasie okupacji hitlerowskiej w Warszawie, dowiódł, że dzięki osobistym działaniom możliwe jest udzielanie pomocy tym, którzy jej najbardziej potrzebują. Pokazał swoją postawą, że każdy z nas właśnie w tych najtrudniejszych momentach, w okresie wojny, w okresie wykluczenia innych, w tym mniejszości, może starać się poprawić ich los i może starać się spowodować dobrą zmianę. Dlatego działalność ogrodów sprawiedliwych na całym świecie jest tak istotna dla każdego z nas. Możemy się uczyć i możemy starać się poprawiać losy tego świata, przypominając sobie działalność upamiętnionych w ogrodach sprawiedliwych.